copy of Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here, which lay beside him on the bed, and he dropped the half-inch twist of paper and marijuana on top of the plastic baggie full of green grains. Instantly, a brown, smouldering, dime-sized hole opened up on the bag, and the pots near the coals started to smoke.
"Stupid,"
said George, as his thumb stabbed the smoking coal to crush it. He drew back his lips in a grimace of pain. A short, fat man walked into the room, law officer written in every mean line of his crafty little face. George shrank back, started to close It Can't Happen Here. Like lightning, 3 stiff, concrete-hard fingers drove into his forearm. He screamed. The book jumped out of his hand, spilling pot all over the bedspread.
"Don't touch that," said the fat man. "An officer being here to gather it up for evidence. I went easy with that karate punch, otherwise you'd be nursing a compound fracture of the left arm in Mad Dog County Jail tonight, and no right-thinking doctor likely to have a mind to come out and treat you." "You got a warrant?"
George tried to sound defiant.
"Oh, you think you have cojones?"
The fat man's breath stank of bourbon and cheap cigars.
"Rabbit cojones. I've terrified you unto death, boy, and you know it and I know it, yet you find it in your heart to speak of warrants. Next, you want to see the American Civil Liberties Union."
He pulled aside the jacket of an iridescent grey summer suit that might have been new in Heartbreak Hotel with the top of the hit parade. A silver 5-pointed star decorated his pink shirt pocket, and a .45 automatic stuck in his pants top dented the fat of his belly.
"That is all the law I need when dealing with your type in Mad Dog. Walk careful with me, son, or you won't have nothing to grab onto next time one of us pigs, as you choose to call us in your little articles, busts in on you. Which is not likely to happen in the next 40 years while you rot and grow old in our state prison."
He seemed immensely pleased with his own oratorical style, like one of Faulkner's characters. George thought, "It is forbidden to dream again. We maim our joys or hide them. Horses are made of chromium steel, and little fat men shall ride them," he said.
"You can't hit me with 40 years for possession, and grass is legal in most other states. This law is archaic and absurd." "Shit and onions, boy. You got too much of the killer weed there to call it mere possession. I call it possession with intent to sell. And the laws of this state are stern, and they are just, and they are our laws, and we know what that weed can do. We remember the Alamo and Santa Anna's troops losing all fear 'cause they was high on Rosa Maria, as they called it in those days. Get on your feet, and don't ask to talk to a lawyer neither." "Can I ask who you are?" "I am Sheriff Jim Cartwright, nemesis of all evil in Mad Dog and Mad Dog County."
"And I'm Tiny Tim," said George, immediately saying to himself, "Shut the fuck up, you're too goddamn high." And he went right on and said,
"Well, maybe your side would have won if Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie had got stoned too. And by the way, Sheriff, how did you know you could catch me with pot? Usually an underground journalist would make it a point to be clean when he comes into this godforsaken part of the country. It wasn't telepathy that told you I had pot on me."
Sheriff Cartwright slapped his thigh.
"Oh, but it was telepathy. Now, just what made you think it wasn't telepathy brought me here?"
He laughed, seized George's arm in a grip of iron and pushed him towards the hotel room door. George felt a bottomless terror, as if the pit of hell were opening beneath his feet, and Sheriff Jim Cartwright were about to pitchfork him into the bubbling sulphur. I must admit, that was more or less the case. There are periods of history when the visions of madmen and dope fiends are a better guide to reality than the common sense interpretation of data available to the so-called normal mind. This is one such period, if you haven't noticed already.
"Keep on hanging with those wild say it, and you will end up in jail.
George's mother said.
You mark my words, George.
And another time at Columbia, after a very late meeting, Mark Rudd said soberly,
A lot of us are gonna spend some time in the man's jails before this shitstorm is over.
And George, together with the others, nodded glumly but bravely. The marijuana he had been smoking was raised in Cuernavaca by a farmer named Arturo Jesus Maria Ibarra y Mendez, who had sold it in bulk to a young Yankee named Jim Riley, the son of a Dayton, Ohio police officer, who in turn smuggled it through Mad Dog after paying a suitable bribe to Sheriff Jim Cartwright. After that, it was resold to a Times Square dealer called Rosetta the Stoned, and a Miss Walsh from Confrontation's research department bought 10 ounces from her, later reselling 5 ounces to George, who then carried it back to Mad Dog without any suspicion that he was virtually completing a cycle. The original seed was part of that strain recommended by General George Washington in the famous letter to Sir John Sinclair, in which he writes,
I find that for all purposes, the Indian hemp is in every way superior to the New Zealand variety previously cultivated here.
In New York, Rebecca Goodman, deciding that Saul will not be home tonight, slips out of bed, dons a robe, and begins to browse through her library. Finally, she selects a book on Babylonian mythology and begins to read, Before all of the gods was Mumu, the spirit of pure chaos. In Chicago, Simon and Mary Lou Cervix sit naked on her bed, legs intertwined in the yab-yum lotus position.
No,
Simon is saying,
you don't move, baby. You wait for you to move you.
Clark Kent and his Supermen swing into a reprise. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock till broad daylight. George's cellmate in Mad Dog County Jail had a skull-like face with large protruding front teeth. He was about 6.5 feet tall and lay curled up in his cell bunk like a coiled python.
Have you asked for treatment?
George asked him.
Treatment for what? Well, if you think you're an assassin, I don't think, baby brother. I've killed 4 white men and 2 niggers. One in California, the rest down here. Got paid for every one of them. Is that what you're in here for?
My God, they don't stick murderers in the same cell with potheads, do they?
I'm in for vagrancy,
said the man scornfully.
Actually, I'm just here for safekeeping until they give me my orders. Then it's goodbye to whoever. President, civil rights leader, enemy of the people. Someday I'll be famous. I'm gonna write a book about myself someday, Ace. Of course, I'm no good at writing. Look, maybe we could do a deal. I'll have Sheriff Jim bring you some writing paper, and if you'll write about my life, they're gonna keep you here forever, you know. I'll come visit you in between assassinations, and you'll write the book, and Sheriff Jim will keep it safe till I retire. Then you have the book published, and you make a lot of money and be real comfortable in jail. Or maybe you can even hire a lawyer to get you out. Where will you be?
Said George. He was still scared. He was feeling sleepy too. He was deciding that this was all bullshit, which had a calming effect on his nerves. But he'd better not go to sleep in the cell while this guy was awake. He didn't really believe this assassin talk. It was safe to assume that anybody he met in prison was homosexual. As if reading his mind, his cellmate said,
How'd you like to let a famous assassin shove it up to you? How would that be, huh, Ace? Please,
said George.
That's not my bag, you know. I really couldn't do it.